Hello everybody, my name is Mario5514 and welcome back to another Splatoon Talk video. In this video we're going to be looking back at some of the previous updates in Splatoon 2's history. Keep in mind that Splatoon 2 has reached its end in terms of balance updates, but we're going to be looking back to see how much the game has changed since the beginning in 2017. And you're probably wondering, why am I on version 1.1.2? Reason behind that is because 1.1 doesn't have its own page on Wikipedia. So I'm going to be looking at the bug fix update. And yeah, at that time, Splatoon 2 had its own meta. Remember sloshing machine meta when people had like 2 or 3 machines at the start of the game in Splatoon 3? Yeah, Splatoon 2 had their own version of bucket meta, and it was Tri-Slosher. Yeah. Tri-Slosher was insanely broken upon the game's launch. Despite Tri-Slosher only getting a slight straight speed nerf, the weapon was still broken. Reason behind that is because of how powerful it, how long its range was, and it also was paired with Burst Bomb. Yeah. On top of that, it also had Ink Armor, which was, at one time, it was 180p. So, yeah. So people could just they could just attack from a distance, use their Burst Bomb for broken chip damage, and just use Ink Armor, like, a lot. So, yeah, that was the hell people had to go through in Splatoon 2 at the very beginning. And you're probably asking, okay, what if I did not want to use Tri-Slosher? What weapons could I use? Answer, only 3 of them. Yeah, that's it. Your only 3 weapons were 10 attack splatter shot, and parry splat dualies, and yeah, rapid blaster. Those were your only weapons that you could use against Tri-Slosher, because rapid blaster was a very solid pick because you had Ink Armor and you also had the blast radius that could just break through Ink Armor, and then you also had Splat Bomb Launcher, which could easily finish the job after the armor was gone. Also, T-Tech and end parries were used because of how broken Inkjet was at this time, so yeah. But aside from that, version 1.1.2 came out on July 26, 2017, and here are the changes they gave out. So, 4 gear items from Splatnet 2 were sold with incorrect primary-only abilities, and they were reset to their default ones. So originally, blue slip-ons had sub-power-up with the knitted hat had ink resistance, the Orca high tops had special saver, and the retro specs had quick respawn, which was their default abilities, which are supposed to be. Their incorrect abilities they had were the blue slip-ons had ninja squid, which is only on clothing. The knitted hat had drop roller, which drop roller is only on shoes. The Orca high tops has thermal ink, which is only for clothing, like Ninja Squid. And then the retro specs had stealth jump for some reason, which is only on shoes. So yeah, they got their default abilities like I've shown here. And points for special changes, yeah, there's a decent amount of them. So remember how I said Tri-Slosher was 180p? Well, Nintendo gave out they gave out plus 30 points for special on Tri-Slosher. It went from 180 to 210, but it wasn't enough. It was not. It was not enough to kill Tri-Slosher's meta. The other changes, regular dualies will get Tenta missiles at 170, end parries will get Inkjet at 170, T-Tech will get Inkjet at 210, NZAP 85 will get Ink Armor at 200, 96 Gal will get Ink Armor at 210, another plus 30, Slosher will get Tent missiles at 190, and Mini Splatling will get Tent missiles at 190. So this was like Nintendo's attempt to try to fix things, but it barely did anything. It barely made a dent. This adjustment is intended to adjust the activation frequency of some special weapons and to slightly improve the balance of the main weapon to the extent that it does not change the feel of the main weapon. The next adjustment, intended to improve the usability of some main weapons, will be made during August. Nintendo. Yeah, that's just their excuse of saying, hey, we couldn't do it this time, but we'll do it the next time. And yeah, let's just jump into the next update here. And yeah, we jump into version 1.2, which came out on August 23rd, 2017. And unlike the last update, this is actually a bigger one. where they added they fixed an issue with the player's rank. They also have a spectator mode, um, which I mean, when spectating from the player's viewpoint in Rainmaker, the on-screen warnings "Don't retreat" and Rainmaker Free Zone will now be displayed. So that's kind of like if you're like in a private battle and you see them and you see like one of the teammates just going backwards, like you'll see "Don't retreat," or if they go into a Rainmaker Free Zone, it'll show on their end. So it's a nice quality of life change. They'll know what's going on. So yeah, spectator mode was given a bit of fixes. Rank was also fixed. Salmon Run was also a new thing in Splatoon 2. One of the key updates is that Grisco Industries has apparently established a new location for its Salmon Run operation. This location is known as Lost Outpost. It appears to be an abandoned settlement near a coastal region, according to the Squid Research Lab. The new stage, Lost Outpost, is now available when playing Salmon Run via local wireless at the Shoal. 21 weapons have been added to the selection of those available when playing Salmon Run at the Shoal. Flyfish can now be defeated by using a splashdown special on their launchers. Fix an issue where the direct hits on a Stinger boss salmonid from either a blaster class weapon or shots fired while using the Inkjet special did not deal the added damage of their shots exploding and only destroyed one level of the towering enemy. So yeah, that got fixed there. They fixed an issue with the Steelhead, with the mothership, as well as they fixed something going on at Marooner's Bay. Fixed an issue causing players to occasionally clip into stage objects in Marooner's Bay. Fixed an issue where playing with friends repeatedly would allow random players to join the group before selecting recruit crew members. And then adjusted parameters for Salmon Run specific weapons. So as shown here. For the Slosher, fixed an issue where the Slosher dealt significantly different damage to Salmonoids when standing in a slightly different positions. So that's nice. For the Blaster, increased damage dealt by shot explosions by approximately 40%, decreased its ink consumption by 20%. For the Clash Blaster, increased damage dealt by shots explosion by approximately 25%, and its ink consumption was reduced by 20%. For Carbon Roller, its ink consumption when using a horizontal and vertical flick was reduced by 30%, and for Splat Roller, it was reduced by 14%. So these are some very good changes here. And Salmon Run was like the biggest thing as well. It was the newest thing added to the series, which was a big thing at the time. For multiplayer, yeah, they did a lot of fixes here. Yeah. Fixed an issue where when taking damage continuously over a short time, the number of sound effects indicating damage did not match the number of times the player took damage. Stopped a sound effect that indicated damage dealt when hitting invulnerable opponents descending to the ground after activating their splashdown special. Yeah, that was kind of weird. Fixed an issue causing players hiding behind a Splatbrella to not appear when being targeted by a Stingray special or the Thermal Ink or Haunt abilities. So yeah, there's a lot of fixes they did in this update, which is nice, unlike what they did last time. And here's the notes they did for the weapons. This time, as previously announced, we will be making adjustments intended to improve the usability of some main weapons. The next round of adjustments, which will focus on changing the performance of several special weapons and some main weapons, will be delivered in early September. Nintendo. Alright, with that being said, let's see what they gave us here. Sploosh. Increased movement speed while shooting by 11%. So Sploosh has 11% faster strafe speed, which is nice. Luna Blaster. Increased accuracy of shots fired immediately after jumping by 17%. So its jump RNG was reduced from 12 degrees down to 10 degrees, which was a nice change. And reduced duration of inaccurate firing after jumping by 1/4 of a second. So originally, Luna Blaster's jump accuracy, like I've mentioned upon the game's launch, was at 40 to 70 frames. This was adjusted down to, instead of taking 40 frames at the start, it was now going to be 25 frames. So this was a reduction of 15 frames. Blaster was also given that same buff as well. Reduced duration of inaccurate firing after jumping by 1/4 of a second. So yeah, that's a nice change for both Luna Blaster and regular Blaster. Clash. Expanded area inked by a single shot and decreased the amount of ink consumed by firing a single shot by 20%. So originally its ink consumption was 5%. This reduced it down to 4%. So Clash is one of the most ink efficient blasters in the series. Yeah, kind of crazy when you look at it, especially when you look at it in Splatoon 3. Carbon roller, decrease the amount of ink consumed by a horizontal or vertical swing by 25%. Originally, its ink consumption was about 6%. This reduced it down to somewhere about 5 to 6%. This reduced it to about in the 3% range. So that's a nice change. Splat roller, decrease the amount of ink consumed by a horizontal or vertical swing by 10%. So originally its ink consumption was 10%. This reduced it down to 9% from what it had originally in Splatoon 1. So that's nice. Dynamo roller, extended range for dealing max damage to an opponent by 14%. So this is the first buff Dynamo roller has been given since the game's launch, when it basically was gutted into oblivion. So this is the first buff, and you're going to start seeing a little bit more of this weapon later in terms of the changes. I mean, the weapon is still trash, but I mean, this is the first buff it's been given. All the regular chargers, including the splatter scopes, reduce the amount of time required to fully charge a shot by 4/60ths of a second. So basically, they reverted the nerf that it got upon the game's launch. So that's nice for the chargers. E-Leader also got the same thing as well. Reduce the amount of time required to fully charge a shot by 4/60ths of a second. For GooTuber, it got another 1 frame off on top of what they got for the regular chargers and the scopes, as seen above. For GooTuber, reduce the amount of time required to fully charge a shot by 5/60ths of a second, and reduce the amount of time to fire a stored charge by 5/60ths of a second. So these are some very nice changes for GooTuber, and you're going to start seeing more of these kinds of changes later. Heavy Splatling, increase movement speed while charging by 20% and increase movement speed while shooting by 3%. So this is basically reverting the nerfs that it got upon the game's launch. So it's some nice changes that I think at this time Nintendo realized that they've gone too far with these changes, so they're going to start walking back all the nerfs that they gave these weapons upon the game's launch. But of course, some of the new faces in the crowd include the Dualies, which they got their first buffs. Extended firing range by 9%, which is only in like standard fire mode, I think. And end parries was given plus 30 points for special, going from 170 to 200 for Inkjet. And for the regular Dualies, they got plus 20, going from 170 to 190. So they're gonna get tent missiles at 190p now. And Baller was also given a buff as well. During use, reduce the amount of damage received from opponent shooters, splatlings, and dualies by 40%. This excluded the blasters, so if you're using like splatter shot, heavy splatling, or splat dualies, you're going to deal 40% less damage to Baller. Except for the blasters. The blasters are still going to deal their normal amount of damage to Baller. So yeah, that's a nice change. Other changes, players who were in your last played Splatfest battle will now appear in Inkopolis Square. Basically, like in the hub area. Fixed an issue where attempting to open the league battle records section caused the game to crash. Don't know why that was the case there. Fixed an issue where content could not be drawn on the edges of the screen when zoomed in while creating a post for display in Inkopolis Square. Wonder why. Fixed an issue where following a multiplayer match, a long animation played appearing to reward the player far more experience points than they had actually earned. I guess it was a bit too generous, so I guess Nintendo toned that back a bit. And that's it. That is all the changes for 1.1.2 and 1.2. And the next updates are going to start doing a lot more, which we'll talk about in the next video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. And until then, stay fresh.